Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, the live show. Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. That is Mr. Edward St. Onge. He has come out of his now, when you say hibernation, his I don't know. It's just he hasn't been around for months, and it's good to see you again. Thank you very much.
Hey, it's great to be back.
With us, we had actually what it was is to get the bear out of the cave, we had to put some honey in front of it. So we got Ellis from
no sweeter honey than Ellis.
And it's like, hey,
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
This is immediately gone downhill. Like, didn't even make it past intros.
Didn't even make past the intro. Anyway, Ellis with Lassie is with us, which is actually the real catalyst for the conversation. We actually got Ed to join us because Ellis has said he would come in and explain the universe, give 2 examples, and do it in less than an hour. So we're good with all of those kind of things. So honestly, I'm almost going to be more spectators in this than anything. But a little bit, Ellis, about Lassie, you're not super long with it, but it's been kind of like a lifetime in the making kind of thing. Because you look through the progression of everything you've done, is like, yeah, I can see why you're there. It works kind of like, why you're there at Lassie. So a little bit about you and a little bit about what Lassie's currently doing, I guess, get things started.
Yeah, no, that I think that's a good place to start. So first, let me maybe set the stage a little bit around like the inflection points that are happening in the industry right now, right? Travel is changing. Frequency of travelers are changing, right? Demand is coming from different areas, and people are trying to find solutions to not only capture demand, keep it, and repurpose it, right? So it's less expensive to get a returning guest than it is to go out and find a new one. That's an old adage. We all know that that's mostly true in most cases. Mm-hmm. Loyalty, which is what Lassie plays a part in, is shifting as well, right? If you look even just this week, gentlemen, you look at the announcements that have come out, right? Westgate has relaunched or launched a loyalty program. Mm-hmm. Within the last couple of weeks, MGM, IHG, Marriott have all made shifts and changes in grandiose fashion to their loyalty programs. The reality is they're all the same exact things that they were 6 months before, and they're just shifting the tier levels so people can burn more points, right? I mean, that's kind of the sense of what's happening. Now, a very interesting program that was launched this week was through Margaritaville and their Perks program, which is a 0 points loyalty program that leverages on-property and instantly gratifying rewards to their guests, right? So it's a different take and a different view on how to create loyalty, brand affinity, bring guests into the top of the funnel and kind of push them out through the bottom. So with all that being said, I'm Ellis Connolly, and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Lassie. Lassie is taking a new approach on the way that hoteliers and vacation rental groups are looking at loyalty and delivering real world solutions to help in that, right? So we have a couple of different products. We have a low funnel conversion tool that incentivizes guests to book direct, and we tease that information throughout the web on the website in order to drive direct bookings. So on average, we see 35-45% increase in direct booking conversions when we're doing A/B, exposed versus unexposed tests, right? The second piece is our kind of loyalty portal, where create signups, create memberships, house the rewards, right? And this is where we also taking in data from your big CRS or PMS players, so we can ascertain lifetime value, MFN, all these different things that we're looking at, right? So at the end of the day, and I'm very new, so this is almost the beginning of the day for me at Lassie. So I was an advisor and had met Jen almost 10, 11 months ago. I was previously with Sabre for a couple of years, leading kind of sales and account management here in North America. And, I was talking to Jen. It was a couple days before Christmas, actually. And she's like, how's it going? What's going on? We were kind of doing our monthly catch up. And I said, And she kind of texted me a couple days later. She's like, how about coming and working for me? I said, all right, well, let's figure it out. we kind of got it all inked on Christmas Eve, and then I was in the saddle at Lassie a couple weeks after the New Year. So it's been it was an awesome end to the year, and we're going to talk here about some of the great starts that we've had. So that's me.
Perfect.
So we'll go a little further here. So I've known you for quite some time.
Yes.
Something I've always liked, and you and I have had this conversation a couple of times in your career changes, is you're a fantastic content creator and educator. So I'm hoping that we'll see some of that in Lassie with you, because I always enjoyed that in your previous, prior to large corporate jobs, your previous gigs.
Before I caged in, you mean?
Yeah, I was
Wow.
gonna keep it a little light. I think an interesting kind of conversation point, if you're open to it, is really talking about the psychology difference between a point-based program and a instant gratification program. Do you think that's a worthwhile thing to talk about? Because I think that's a big differentiator here on what you're doing at Lassie. Is it's really using the psychology of instant gratification to motivate people. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
No, I think that's a really good jumping off point, and I think you also need to tie in, right? The quick world of needing to be instantly gratified, not just from a reward perspective, but just in general, right? I think that's kind of a cultural shift that has happened over the past decade or so. But there's also a perceived value, right? That being instantly rewarded versus having to earn to reach a certain level to then be rewarded for something that's probably nominal or has less perceived value than what you can receive immediately. Also it kind of plays within the urgency direct booking space as well. And I think all of it, from a path to purchase psychology or how you want to buy, really, really helps Lassie in creating a storyline that just hits on, a few different of those marks.
So I think if we talk about the psychology of instant gratification, the younger you go, the more prevalent that is. And a lot of it has to do with the on-demand world that we live in. Boomers, Gen Xers, I'm a Gen Xer. Remember the time where, if you wanted to watch a show, you had to wait to a specific time frame to view it. And the younger you go, the more on demand their lives became. And, I think we started seeing some of that shift as millennials started moving into economic viability as consumers. And let's all remember that millennials are starting to hit 40 at this point. So they're hitting their prime of economic influence. And they grew up where a good amount of their life started seeing the introduction of on-demand everything, where everything was at your fingertips. And I think that's really where this movement started, was as they started reaching into economic viability, the world started seeing a consumer who had completely different motivations and a completely different way of looking at things. And it does come with the world around them. I've been saying for years that the generations behind the millennials are going to be the most challenging consumers to interact with, because their entire life was them being engaged with incredibly high quality design via both Apple and Android, and with everything being instantly capable of acquiring. They didn't even have to deal with waiting to download something because everything for them is instant gratification. Yep. That's going to be a challenging consumer, and it's a very different consumer than the baby boomers, who really built a lot of their world around you work hard at something and you work towards a goal, and it's worth working towards that goal because there's a reward at the end. That was the older generation, and into Gen X very much had a lot of that. But as you move past that, that is no longer the world we live in. And not saying that boomers and Xers haven't started also realizing that instant gratification is great. It's just they do remember the goal setting and working towards something. And loyalty as it was a scheme to really play to that psychology of I'm working towards something and I'm working towards that goal, and I will adjust my behavior pattern to achieve that goal. That is not going to work with these younger generations.
Right. And you've even seen it though. And Ed, those are all spot on points. Right. And an analogy to spread that span of generations that I've used in the past is, like when I have a daughter, she's 2.5 years old. She's adorable. And she thinks everything is a touch screen. Mm-hmm. Right. And she gets on and flips it and something should happen. Right. But then when we call our Nan, that's my mom, her grandmother, her Nan, as we call them, she's from England. My mom turns the phone on and we're doing FaceTime, but we can only see the top of her forehead. Right. Mm-hmm. And we have to, as technology providers, as marketeers, as, whatever we're calling ourselves, we've got to find a way to span that gamut, right? Maybe not the 2.5-year-old, but the analogy there, I think is pretty solid.
Alice, you just gave me an idea that we should call ourselves the marketeers, and there's Eddie in the corner. Sorry, that's just bad angle. But okay, there is one point you do bring out, and this is that we tend to, and I just did a podcast about this, about OTT television advertising. We tend to apply old metrics to new methodologies. Like, okay, we've done this for marketing. So now with these new platforms, like, just even pick another thing other than OTT TV, TikTok and stuff. Oh, I'm going to do what I normally do, marketing on this new platform. And it fails miserably because it literally doesn't equate. They don't go together. It's oil and water kind of stuff. You bring out a great point, is that traditionally people have gone through this reward development process. It's more of a frequency program than a loyalty. In old shows, I used to be standing on a soapbox pounding that all the time. It's not a loyalty program. It's just a frequency program. And we don't realize that nowadays we were forcing people into two decisions when they were looking at this. Hilton tried this or worked with this. Sign up and get this. Great. Their unsigning, their unsubscribe was massive because all I did was do that so I could get what I needed. If anything, it put a glaring eye on the fact that people don't see the relationship the way it was originally founded of sign up and develop a relationship with us, and we'll acknowledge that relationship through the frequency of how often you come to us. And to what you're saying is true. It doesn't exist at this point. It's more like, if I do this, what do I get for this? What can you give me as a value difference between you and somebody else I'm considering?
Yeah. And I look at loyalty with the big brands very differently than I do as we come further down into smaller and mid-size and even independent hotels, right? Marriott's loyalty membership base, and they just had earnings this past week, and I think a statistic in there was like 50% of their bookings from the past quarter came from loyalty members, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a good statistic for Marriott to share, right? It'd be interesting to understand in that same context, of those loyalty members, how many signed up just to get internet the first time they were on a Marriott property, right? I mean, that's going to the point that you were just speaking about.
But again, I mean, so first things first on here is none of these programs have ever been loyalty.
Yeah, it's a tool for
it's
senior,
a scheme. It's a scheme. I mean, all it is a scheme to try to game people.
Even the CEO of Marriott, now it's been about 12 months plus, referred to the fact it's skewed to the side of the house.
Yeah.
Right.
It's literally, they admitted this is for the benefit of hotel ownerships. This is not for the benefit of the user experience.
Actually, let's be honest. It's not even to the benefit of hotel ownership. It's the benefit of
that's true.
Not with those fees.
No, not with the redemption rates that they get out. No.
So, but kind of talking through this, calling a spade is, first of all, everyone's a member of every loyalty program.
Yeah,
if I have to, and so it's situational loyalty at best, right? So understanding that and thinking that through, if you want someone to better value what you're offering, setting goalposts that are potentially 20, 30, 40 trips out is not going to appeal to the majority of consumers.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
So will they sign up? Sure. But they're actually going to sack your KPIs on how much do they engage with your targeting and things like that. So, does that mean these programs like shouldn't exist? No, it just means they need to be rethought to, what's really happening, because you actually can skew people's behavior. And that's where I think the instant gratification side of things is really interesting. And also, I mean, the one thing I find interesting about the positioning that Lassie took is the fulfillment of the reward is not necessarily a property specific thing. It's things that people like Starbucks and, retail stores and things like that. Which I think is meaningful because you're actually telling the consumer, like, it doesn't have to be all about us. It can, like, what do you want?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 30% off your 7th night stay.
Right. Because let's face it, what's the average length of stay for every hotel? 2.8.
2.8.
But the other interesting aspect you bring to the table about this is that you've brought down to a core relationship of what you need for doing this, what they need for doing what you're asking them to do. What you're asking for is not that carrot on a stick retention frequency that pointing out. It's what can I give you to make this transaction? And in exchange of what you're giving me, which is the ability to reconnect with you, I'm good with that.
Yep.
We're bringing it down to a base level.
And that's really talking to their original product. But with the recent addition, the really interesting place that they've gone to now is really that next level of challenge. So great, I got the transaction from you, but now I have a wider application to motivate you to further fill out your profile. Tell me more about you. And that's something that most marketers really struggle with, is how to get the consumer to want to share more. And that's where I think things have gotten really interesting for Lassie. I mean, I always thought the instant reward stuff was interesting, and definitely is something that moves behavior. You're always going to be stuck in that. It begs the question of, like, how many people took it that didn't need it, and all of that stuff. And you'll never know. There's no way of knowing unless you literally ask every single person. And even then, they're not going to always tell you, because they're not thoughtful. They're not thinking about, did this actually move me? And actually, if you call out to them that we think this moved you, that may actually make them say it didn't, because they don't want to say that I got gamed into something, right? But I think with where you've gone with building it as a wider application, it's a big change. In value proposition, and that value proposition is you're now serving a deeper need that hotel marketers have, which is they really need a better profile of who they have captured.
Yeah, and Ed, that is where we find ourselves. I say completing the circle of the golden profile, right? It's you've got, we are leveraging AI from an IP perspective in order to identify geo, identify device, identify zip code, right? So we do that in our Convert product, which is the incentive engine. But to your point, as you get them rolled into the loyalty portal or the program, right? Similar to what Margaritaville Perks is, now we're able to ascertain and give better rewards and better offers, right? Because now we've got more data. Right? You've told us exactly who you are. You've told us, your gender. You've told us these different things that we're leveraging in order to serve up different content that we think over time and learning, right, is gonna help and build more brand affinity.
Yeah.
The interesting piece on that as well is offering those more typical on property options is something that next product allows folks to do, right? If you still want to be able to offer that $25 resort credit, or that, that hot air balloon ride, wherever you are.
And that's the thing is, actually, let's talk about the differences in these incentives. So, I mean, you have the incentives, which are pure gives, right? Resort credits, things like that. But with the newer product, you also have the ability to get into some of the gaming that the traditional loyalty programs actually have big value in. So actually masking a reward as a revenue generating opportunity. So something at the spa, something at the restaurant, something that's going to drive add-on transaction value.
Yeah.
You're now getting into really interesting revenue management opportunity for total revenue value of a traveler, not just of the booking.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's every revenue strategist dream is, driving, bits and pieces of ancillary revenue, the total revenue management concept that our industry in hotel has been talking about for 25 years, but casinos seem to be the only one that have gotten it right.
Because they can invest in it because they make so much on the other stuff.
As a reminder to everyone that's on this side of us, not everyone on the social recasting sides, but on this side, and the attendees, if you would like to join and ask questions or just even make comments in the chat, you're more than welcome to for questions or anything like that. Always an open discussion for anybody that wants to join us on that side. And for anybody on social, please join us over at bit.ly/HDM show 341. And once you get in the platform, you can join in and ask questions there too. It's hard to watch all the other platforms because some comments come up going, yeah, great idea and good to see Ed, which I don't know what, that person must be drunk. But anyway.
Tell them I'll send them their Venmo shortly.
Ed's paying cash. But the interesting timing, not just for you having joined Lassie, but Lassie to where it is now, we're in the crux of technology stacks, people reevaluating the technology stacks. You have what I call hollow kingdoms at this point, because I feel brand is on the outside kind of trying to look like they have always been, but in the inside, not a lot there. Yeah. And from that, there's these businesses that are looking to redefine their relationship stats. They realize, as you point, it's a simple stat, but it's a very profound stat. It's easier to retain than it is to acquire. Just if you can find a relationship, but to put it into the context of how people want it to be, like, don't bug me, don't frequency my butt off where I have to unsubscribe. Give me options of engagement. Give me value for what I do for business with you, and give me things that I find interesting to want to aspire to. You're doing that. You're putting those pieces together to say we're at the right place. We're offering the right service. It's adaptable. It's usable, flexible, whatever way you want to use it. And it provides tiered relationship values where we can be as simple as just engaging them to be wanting to stay with us, all the way up to creating that relationship value proposition of retaining them.
Yeah, and I think the way that we think about it is, a traditional loyalty program is this tiered model, right? And with Lassie, we're a slope, right? So every transaction that you have with the brand that we're helping to power, you're getting something, right? And then we can micro tier, right? On the back end, we can set a schema or parameters and base it on a multitude of different factors that can allow you to increase the value of the rewards that we offer as they reach certain kind of micro levels. But the point is, because you do have someone, if someone's staying at your hotel and they're there every month for 3 days, right? You want to be able to support that person with a mega offer, right? Mm-hmm. Or something that's a little bit more, something that has more perceived value than, you mentioned the $5 gift card to Starbucks, or lifetime, or 24-month subscription to Time Magazine, all these different things that we do. $10 in Bitcoin from Coinbase. So we've got this kind of wide offering from 1,000 different merchants, right? So we have a massive catalog to be able to pull value into, and it's a matter of leveraging our AI capability and making sure that we're delivering the right offers and the right rewards at the right time to those folks, right? And there's many different factors that go into that. But what we find is that people react, surprise and delight. They react by booking direct, and they react by coming back to the brand because they know this is what's going to happen, right? If I book, and that makes me feel good, right? You go back to the psychology of it.
Mm-hmm. It's Pavlov's loyalty.
Yeah, exactly.
I hear a bell.
Yeah, but think about this, gentlemen, for a second. What is the most highly targeted segment of travelers right now that hotels are trying to get? It's leisure, right? And what does this product like enforce or reinforce, right? It's the traveler who's going to come to your hotel maybe once, right? Maybe twice if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about if you're an independent property at this point,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're not like, for me and Ed, you and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. You know, I was 100,000 miles a year in the air for 10 years before COVID, right? I mean, I know a lot of us were,
Yep.
right? I don't see myself going back to that in a business travel perspective personally, right? Now, do I have friends that work at other organizations who never stopped traveling during COVID? Yes, right? So the spectrum is broad and it runs the gamut. But you know, the idea of how do I get somebody, a leisure traveler that I've never worked with before, how do I get them to book? How do I make them excited to book? And then how do I create a surprise and delight environment that makes them feel good about what they just did within their purchase? And that's what we do, right? And then from there, to retain that person, you push them into our loyalty platform. I mean, that you know is kind of where we're sitting. Now, we are working on things on the business travel space, right? We are trying to figure out ways in the small meetings, right, of how we can get our incentive engine tied into some of those products out there. Those conversations are happening ad nauseum, right, at some point. But the other channel that we're really looking at, and this was highly impacted over COVID, was the voice channel, right? You think about, you know, when I was at Sabre, the call volume over COVID was insane.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and go out and ask any of these other providers, go ask Travel Outlook, ask all these other kind of call center providers. The call volume was crazy because people were unsure about their bookings, right? Especially if you're spending at a high value property, they want to know, hey, I'm going to call. Is the restaurant open? Is there going to be towel service? Can I still get drinks at the bar? Can I get breakfast delivered? Right? Like all these things. So that volume increased substantially, and I have some numbers somewhere, but it was dramatic. We see a world very clearly where a reward incentive platform plays very well into a call center environment that allows agents to save the sale if someone's waffling, right? So help drive voice reservations, but also create a surprise and delight environment again. Oh, great, Mr. St. Onge, your rate qualifies you for these 3 amazing rewards on behalf of the hotel. They'll be delivered to you electronically after we hang up. Bum, bum, bum. So there's this other channel where Lassie has found itself providing great value to our partners. And it ties into a story. If you're leveraging the incentive engine and the loyalty platform and then moving it up the funnel to incorporating some of those concepts into your marketing, into your social, into your retargeting, right? You see the big brands do this with their loyalty programs, right? Book now, this member rate, receive 30%. Mm-hmm. Okay, no, the perceived value there is so low. Book now and receive a $25 restaurant.com credit and 70 days of Showtime subscription because you want to watch Yellowstone, right? I mean, that perceived value is $80 versus the 30% off my, $100.
Well, it's anchoring, right?
Right, 100%.
You're playing into that psychology of, anchoring value proposition, 30% off versus actual hard dollar amount. It's a tangible difference. And again, it comes into knowing how consumers function, right? And having options also plays a big role, because guess what? If I am a business traveler, the crap you're giving me at the restaurant doesn't matter. Why? Because I'm not paying for any of that anyways.
Right.
And so, this is some of the clever aspects of where you guys have gone with this and how you've changed over the years. And really, I mean, let's call it what it is. This gives a simple way for hotel marketers to not have to get overly clever on how do I get more data from my people, right? And everyone needs it. Everyone needs a simple way to fill out the profile, because the profile is going to help empower how you engage the rest of the way. And, this kind of gives that, like, everyone knows what a loyalty program is to some level, right? Everyone knows that there's value in doing it. You're kind of being more bespoke to the person versus what you want to give. And it gives that reason to get the rest of the profile. Working it into call center is very clever, because it also makes it easier for the rep to, give a reason why, like, you should give us more information, right? It's all about this kind of, incremental approach to owning your audience. And I think everyone has learned on all sides of our industry that your owned audience is so much more valuable than you ever gave credit to. Previously, you measured it as, I slammed the red button again because I need to fill rooms, and I filled rooms.
And I dropped right?
But you're actually realizing that having an audience that cares about what you say is incredibly important, especially in times of crisis, because that is usually your cheapest audience to engage when you need it the most, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that the timing of your expansion, is really good, because I think our industry is a little bit more aware of the value of having that direct relationship, and it's more than book direct. And I know everyone likes to talk about book direct, but again, if you own your relationship, you can avoid all costs of reacquisition. Book direct is not some magic thing if you're not giving people the path directly to you, right? Meaning skipping Google, skipping Facebook. Let's try not to pay the toll keepers. And, the toll keepers aren't just the OTAs. The toll keepers are that wider cost of customer acquisition that our industry is addicted to.
Yeah.
From a first person perspective, first off, I love the fact that there's a variation too, because I have these exact conversations with independent hotels. And where we've been successful by having the independent hotel listen to what we're asking them to do, they've had great success. And that is find ancillary values that you can provide to your guests when they're either being solicited by us or when they're communicating with you, that you can add to their experience, like simple tokens of tours and discounts in local restaurants and so forth, that they themselves can't provide it from their own services, but because of where they're located, they can create those relationships. Getting that moved off the mark is painful, because it requires work and effort from people that are already overworked and have way too much to do. We can talk about labor every day about hospitality at this point, and there's just not the resources, even if the interest is there. And the execution is a whole nother level to this. So when you offer things that are other value propositions, that isn't just 30% off the room or whatever value point is, it disappeared. Then you're giving them a perceived value that they can equate to. Like when you talk about showtime, to the point, if I'm a corporate traveler, 30% off my room, I don't care. That's benefiting not me. Some of the ways that companies kind of incentivize their workers is to say, you get the points if you use the card. Okay, ching, I'm good. Then they're going to be more conservative. Google's with their, you get to have credits for your travel, and you can go over and redeem them. If you want to go below your per diems, you build that creative buffer so that you can go to the really spiffy places later on. So giving those alternative values, like where I said, let me in Showtime. Yeah, I'd love to go over and see Yellowstone. I just don't feel like dropping the monthly right now. It's not that important to me. But if you're going to give it to me for doing what I was already going to do, to heck yeah, I'll hook up. And that adaptability of value perspective is really, really solid, because kind of going back to first person discussions with hotels, when I try to explain that to hotels, they're like, well, we can't control what the restaurant's going to give us a discount. It's not important. It's the fact that they're willing to, that you can convey that to the people. That's the value proposition you're doing. Anyway.
Yeah, it is. And look, I mean, you're kind of hitting on something that is talked about when we're in these conversations with independent hotels, because what Lassie does is we open up our network that we've already done all the legwork to negotiate the offers around, right? And when you're sitting if you're an independent hotel, and I'm outside of LA, you're sitting in an independent hotel in LA, there is the idea that I could go out and make a relationship with the local restaurant. I could go out and make a relationship with the local tour operator. I could go out and do the same thing with the guy setting up the fishing boat at the end of the pier, right? Like I can do that, and I can offer those types of experiences, right, within my booking path. But here's the thing. The second somebody from that fishing tour gets fired or quits, that whole relationship crumbles, right? The second the manager or the GM from that restaurant moves over to another restaurant, nobody else in that restaurant knows about what the hell was going on with these offers in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this operational like impact and lift that hotels have to do, and some do it well, right? I'm not trying to cast a broad stroke there. Some hotels do it really well, but if you want, a turnkey loyalty in a box where you can have very appealing, high perceived value offers that are local to your market, right, and are nationally recognized as well, I mean, it is a very much one-stop shop, right?
And most importantly, is yours, meaning it's your hotels. You're not joining a network of other hotels, yes. And
which is usually the only other option out there is like, well, if I can't do it myself, I have to join something that has which addresses I'm only going to get them once or twice. So why am I going through this? Why do I need an app for an independent hotel? If it's a small little independent hotel, they're not going to come back frequently enough to even keep the real estate on their phone. I get forgotten. I'm constantly having them redo this stuff. Why? When they can say, look, I already have a built-in program with you all that allows me to have that value proposition in multiple places.
And look, unless you're, like from an independent hotel perspective, unless you're like going to link up to a preferred or someone that's got like some global horsepower.
But even then, I mean,
yeah,
really.
Well, I think that, look, I think the folks that are in those programs, and like taking COVID out of it, right? I think there's an area of opportunity where those folks running those programs, and I'm not saying preferred specifically, but any of the programs that kind of live in that space, we've got to be looking at a parallel to points strategy, right? There has to be some other paralleling ideas, concepts, rewarding psychology triggers that help move the needle, right? And you want to know something? Everyone at the cash back aspect, I don't get it, right? 5% cash back on a $200 room night is $10 compared to what we offer perceived value of $100, right? We're 10xing some of what that perceived value is. So, I look through and I think about the different kind of segments in the hotel market, right? Economy, mid-scale, you kind of move up, upper, upscale, and luxury, right? So, we get into these conversations sometimes, especially when we're going up the ladder to the luxury segment. And it's like, well, every hotel thinks they have a very unique offering, and they all do, right?
Unique, but comparable to others. I mean, that's the thing everyone has to understand. There is no
same difference.
Yes. Yeah. You may be unique in your market, but there is another hotel just like you in another destination. Like full stop. That's it is what it is.
Full stop. And when you go up market, it's a more affluent. These are the words that we hear from the marketers on that side. It's a more affluent customer base, right, or guest base. They're not going to want to take the, $25 Ticket Network gift card. They're not going to want to take the, $10 Uber credit. So we go out, and in order to accommodate that conversation, we'll find offers and be able to negotiate with merchants around, Bitcoin, stock options, right? Does that align with that? More charitable aspects, right? More philanthropic aspects, plant a tree, carbon offset, some of those types of offers. I think what is shocking sometimes is when you get down to it, they're still taking the same offers everyone else wants to take.
So let's go down that rabbit hole for a bit, because you've been on this side of the industry long enough that I'm sure you'll appreciate this. But did you ever notice that the luxury hotel marketer tends to completely like overshoot the profile of who it is that stays with them, you know? And I'm really talking about the hotels that sit in the like $850 to $2,000 a night range.
Yeah.
And do you ever notice they all basically give the same persona, which is that of what's basically a Saudi prince?
Yeah, I think
which is
five.
Yeah.
But there's got to look. I think there is a little bit of like a FOMO, like climber mentality behind that marketing, right? Like if this is my point about it though. Is an $800 to $2,000 a night hotel room. You're talking middle management at Verizon going on their big annual family trip, right? Fair. Like, which is, you know, not the G5. They're not all that different of a consumer. And if anything, on that trip, they become cost conscious really quickly. Yeah.
And I kind of laugh because I sit in meetings from time to time and I hear someone telling me who their guest is. And I'm like, actually, the person you just described doesn't stay in anything less than $6,000 to $10,000 a night. Like you're literally talking about, you know, a Lakers player. I mean, you're not talking about who the majority of your guests are. Do you get those people? Yes. Are they filling your rooms year round? No. It's the you know, high paid corporate America. It's the entrepreneur.
It's the Ed St. Ange.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Mr. Bronco.
Hey, but I mean, this is the thing that makes me laugh about when we talk about the difference in behavior on rate strategy.
Yeah.
You know, it's a massive gulf. It's much bigger than I think these hotels understand before you get into truly different behavior patterns. But you just said.
Let me add one little caveat to that. In current time circumstances, I think if anything, time now, the bucket list mentality is at a forefront compared to I'll get to it someday mentality, where some people will push their financial boundary.
This is what I'm saying. The people who are the ones who are filling most of those rooms are the ones who reached to stay in that.
Yeah, they're going up to this, and it better be everything they envisioned for it to be, rather than settling down for it because it's the only thing available in the market when they drop the G5 in the airport.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then they're spending $2,000 a night, and then quickly realize that they're also going to spend $2,000 to feed a family of 4 for dinner.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, but okay. Going back to the hotels, from a first-hand experience I've had, where there was a very well-established membership club resort. And the annual participation was very expensive in relative terms to be a part of it. And the monthly per diems per spends were very high. And they wanted to try a temporary membership. And we targeted it and worked very, very well. It was a summertime temporary membership. Made really great money, but the people were treated like junk to the full-time people. Full-time people like, get out of my chair. Literally, get out of my chair. Yeah. I'm a full-timer. You got a little
new money versus
card.
Old money.
It's like
tale as old as time.
So what we did was we flipped it and said, here's the deal. Whoop, we lost that again. Is we'll give the full-timer credits towards how much they can bring in the temporary people. In other words, make them feed the group.
Yeah.
And rich people are rich for a reason. And so they started pushing that idea forward to then where we started reaching out to other clubs, you know, whether for tennis or for boating or for whatever it is, golfing and everything else that we had our own clubs with, and said, can we do a crossover value? If we show up with us, they'll pay you more to be there, but you will recognize they're a member of our club, and in turn, we'll do the same with your club. So they get to sample over. And usually those walls were very defined. We don't want them to see another club because they might leave us to join them.
Right.
A lot of times it's just they want to go see what the other side of the other field looks like and try it. But that membership relationship generated so much money. The long-term alumni, the ones that paid the annuals and did all that stuff, they were enjoying the same level of what they did by including more and more people, by saying you should come over and see, you should go over and see. And by doing that, they were incentivized to reduce their value, their cost to being a part of the organization. in a strange way, I see what you're doing as being somewhat similar to it in the sense of, look, by joining our, from the hotel's perspective, by joining what we have to offer, you're not having to share that necessarily with direct competitors, but the direct competitors are realistically people that will get your business because they're not always going to be loyal to you. It just doesn't exist. Didn't even really exist when everybody said it did either.
Yeah.
Just, Holiday Inn was Holiday Inn because the bed was the same when you traveled 150 miles down the road and you found another Holiday Inn. So the reality of what you're doing in the sense of the value proposition is very profound. And that's all I have to say about Ed. I'm just saying. That's all I got to say about that.
Hey, if all you're going to say about me is I'm profound, I'll take it.
No. That was the last word of you, but for a whole different reason.
You already knew that, Ed. So, yeah, I mean, look, Loren, I think there's, and I was just talking to, to our team, this past week about just, we as a company and as an industry, I feel like, we're at this inflection point where loyalty has become a very strong component of a lot of conversations, right? Like if you just go back and look over, so I was at Alice out in LA here a couple of weeks ago, right? The conference. And there were a string of white papers that were released, right? Industry outlook papers by Accenture, by Deloitte, American Hotel and Lodging put something together, and Chip Rogers was out there, kind of discussing it across the board. Every single piece was talking about, in some form, right? Not the whole piece, but every single paper had a decent size narrative around, hey, guys, we got to change what we're doing. I mean, and then in layman's term, hey, it's not working. So we need to figure out what we do as an industry to fix it. And I was lucky enough, in my quick wit thinking, I was very thankful to some folks over at Accenture, and I got an opportunity to speak to one of them that was included in helping build out the paper. And we were just talking through some of the things that, some of the big brands are doing. And it's sometimes there is this pride, technical debt, tons of money that have been invested into these programs, and trying to move a big ship that's been directed in a way is challenging sometimes, right? And I know that firsthand working at big companies, right? So I get it, I understand it. But the ability to easily do something around what Lassie does, if we're using Lassie or not, but the ability to change a model or create a micro model inside your longer model is pretty easy to do, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that we're going to start seeing, not only areas of opportunity for Lassie, but areas of opportunity for other products to play into loyalty as well. So I didn't know if you guys had thoughts around, I know we're talking about Lassie, but other pieces that might go into that.
One thing I'd like to say is we're going down that path of change. For the love of God, to anyone in our industry who is listening to this, stop looking at retail for what to do. We are a completely different type of transaction, and you're completely missing everything retail did to make their model work. And let me talk about that a bit. Our journey, our marketing stack in general is a mimic of retail, but we missed the whole part where the retail industry killed themselves in investing in de-risking the transaction to making returns easy, no hassle, and totally worth taking the risk on an impulse buy. You can't return a trip. You have to live through it, and the consumer is aware of this. Stop mirroring what retail does as a benchmark of what we will do as an industry. We don't sell shoes. We sell experiences and time.
Okay.
Start thinking that way.
Okay. Let me add to one thing what you just said, and this goes to the direct channel conversation. We are so enamored with the direct channel. We feel it is, to you say, a panacea of success. By doing direct channel, we have succeeded against any other value source proposition that we have. There's positive. I'm not just poo-pooing on the whole direct channel idea of this, but I always equate it to kind of relationship building. Direct channel conversion is a lot like having gone on a few dates before you finally go over and pop the question of, we should do this, right? We like each other, we should do this. You don't do it on the love at first sight does happen, but usually it's a progression of engagements that bring you to this point of conclusion. And so often we are so fixated on the conversion point, I'm going to be successful in what I'm attempting to do.
Let's call it what it is. It's the same in our industry as what you're drawing a parallel to. Yeah. I'm going to get you to sleep with me. I mean, that's all our industry is focused on, is just putting that out there. Come sleep with us.
Just saying that. So the idea of this insistent engagement to get to this point, you have your highlighted choice of going to a bar on a Friday night. There's higher odds of things going that way compared to I met you a few times. We're at the same coffee shop. I run across you because we work in the same office building. Eventually it builds up to a request that, hey, you want to go off sometime and have lunch or something like this. That part gets forgotten in a lot of processes. And I'm saying this as a compliment to you, Alice, because I think, Lassie, going to your conversation of the size that you are for what you're doing, the large entities, when I think of brands and so forth, they see this as I'm in total control of the dialogue. And it's not that anymore. And you're right. They can't change on a this is wrong, we need to fix, because they've obligated themselves in too much variety to make the change effective to everyone. And they can't do it for just the one that they need.
Well, and not just that, turning a big ship is even harder when you have half the normal force.
Right. You don't have everybody doing the stuff. Yeah. But one thing's for certain on that ship, there is a way of making it go down the water really fast by hitting an iceberg. There is ways to make the whole thing. Nobody's too big to fail as much as they think they are. The adaptive capabilities that you have with what you're offering and from Lassie's size, and I'll say the same credit to you, Ed, with Flip.to. The fact that you see something, you approach it where you think is a solution, you experience it, you do the testing necessary and go, we were about 80% right. Well, Ed's always 100% right, but that's another story.
It's a whole nother. That's a whole when we ignore all the times leading up to it,
therapist should be involved
and just talk about the end part. Yes, right. There may have been 1,000 wrongs before the final got it right.
But the idea that you can adapt and say we have to make these tweaks and these changes, your relationships that you've built through this process are expecting that of both of you. Mm-hmm. They're not looking at saying, "Well, you told me it was going to be exactly this." No. They've worked with you long enough to know that you're saying, this is what we're going to do with this intent in mind. But no, we might take a different path to get there. And that adaptability that you both represent is solid. And I bring this up for the fact of when we first started talking, Alice, is like my perception of what Lassie is and has been is not a complete picture. I don't know all the things that Lassie has done, which is why I was so happy when Ed says, well, you should get him on the show. And I'm like, yeah, I already asked him, and then we got to this point. It's because it gave me a depth of looking at, it's not the one thing I remember. It's not even the 2 or 3 things. And it's not even the hearsays and third parties and did you hear abouts. It's I'm talking to you. And as I'm talking, I'm hearing that, this is the progression you're going. This is where we're looking to go. And this is the things that we're able to do at this point. And that's a solid adaptation that I can name lots of large companies. And we've thrown a few names around that you've worked with before and stuff that can't sit here and say the same thing because their hands are tied. Yeah. I fight with them every day when I'm dealing with one unit property, which is not going to get on their radar for anything other than keeping a squeaky wheel because they're so huge. They're going to do what they're going to do, and you're going to have to do it their way. Nothing you've said today says that that's how you approach the projects. It's like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we offer. And we're open to figuring out if there's something else we need to do differently. And I've known Ed for long enough to know that that's always been the case of everything they've ever done. It's like, let's try this. So
yeah, nothing's ever done.
Iteration after iteration after iteration, and we always should be doing that, right?
Because if you're not doing that, it's the day you stop innovating is the day you start dying.
Yeah,
I mean, I can name companies that I can by name that I say are in that role right now.
Yeah,
they are trying to maintain
to give credit to our industry. Nothing actually ever fully dies. We have a lot of zombies, but they're shells of their previous. No, and that's why I thought it was interesting to have Ellis come on because I think our industry, when they look at things, they see what it is at the point in time that they look at it, and they think it's always going to be that. Where good companies change and they evolve and they solve. And, often when you look at a company when it's in its startup phase, yes, it is minimum viable version of their vision because it's what they have to do to scale and to grow. It's always worth checking back in because you never know when the picture comes together.
Yeah. And I thank you for that comment. I think it's, it's important. It's important for that to be said. But, when I met Jen, the founder, I was kind of struck up a conversation, met through a industry colleague, and then, she asked me to advise, right? And I did for months. And just seeing within the 10 months or 9 months that I was advising before coming on board full time, just the iteration and more so the passion, right? Like it's, all hands on deck all the time on everything, right? And that is fun, exciting. And Ed, I tend to thrive in those types of environments. And we are looking at a lot of different things as well that also fit into different parts of our industry, right? And this is something, and I know we're coming up on time, but this is something that I also think is important, right? Because when you think about the method, or you think about the concept of rewarding someone for a behavior that you as a brand, a hotel in this case, are asking someone to do, and you think of it as a incentive engine, right? This concept can sit on top of many different parts within your hotel, right? Or it can sit on many different parts of existing loyalty programs, right? You're a big loyalty program with 2 gazillion members, but a gazillion and a half of them haven't logged into their profile in 6 years. Use the incentive engine, right? You're not getting good responses on your survey platform with Medallia. Use the incentive engine, right? And you could say that same sentence and insert something and then use the incentive engine behind it on a dozen different things that are super relevant to what's going to be impactful for a hotel, right? Now, as a company, we can't go out and boil the ocean and do it all, right? And you know about this prioritization, roadmap, trying to get things done. But the reality is the story of that rewarding concept and that psychology, you talk about it, right? If you string it through the pre-stay, the dream state, the purchasing, the path onto the web, through into your loyalty, the post-stay, and the re-engagement, now you've built a brand narrative. At the center of it is Lassie powering how you're building loyalty, brand affinity, and rewarding your guests. And that, that's the storyline that we're like aggressively pushing to.
It's a great perspective because, in all honesty, people do know the worth of what they are to the businesses that they're doing. They know their email has value. They know their transaction with you has value. It's saying that you have to do enough of those to get something that mentioned by Ed, a bottle of water, basically. Yay! Ooh, that 10th visit to your hotel was well worth me doing that. And it's putting value to the relationship as it is happening, rather than this maybe future tense, I'll reward you if you show you're worthy. We as an industry do that way too often in so many things. HR is a huge issue with that right now that I've talked about lots about, where it's just, we do this, not until you've been here long enough do we give you rewards for it. It's like, we can't live like that anymore. We can't beat you up until you qualify to not be beaten up.
I did love the title of the show last week. It was like, HR, stop bitching and
start fixing. And so a lot of people are like, preach. I'm like, okay, well, I get in on in here and he'll straighten me up. It's like, that's not.
A lot of people don't realize Loren's not actually 6'5". It's a soapbox that he's perpetually perched up on. That adds that extra height.
That's exactly what it is. And then just that extra 4 to it. And to your point, we are at the end of the hour for all of this. Ellis, to say that you're more welcome to come back anytime you want to is an understatement. You are more than welcome to come back anytime you want to, especially if you can torment Ed in any capacity whatsoever, which is always a joy for me at any time to be able to spar with Ed because, it's just fun. And any closing?
Loren loves those impossible tasks.
Oh, see, that's where it comes from. Mental repartee, and he says I'm always unarmed when I do. So, okay.
No, Alice, I love that you're back with a small company. I've always thought that's when you're in your best form. You and I have talked about that a couple of times as you've navigated your career. So I'm glad to see you back at a small, innovative company. I think our industry is better when you're in those positions.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a shame to say, but there's some really good friends that are very talented that they get a new position with a larger company, and all of a sudden, nope, we're done talking. They can't talk. They're not the same person anymore. So yeah, it is nice when you get that chance to see you flourish in some place. And not that I know near as well as Ed, but it's always nice to see adaptive companies in that sense. So thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Well, look, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. We'll definitely keep a conversation and a narrative going, I'm sure, but very exciting times here at Lassie. And I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out to Ed for all the amazing stuff that he's been doing at Visit North Carolina and the platform and the program that they just rolled out. It's just industry changing. It really is. So kudos to you and the team. And I know you've been head down, buried and getting a lot of that stuff done. So carving out some time here for us and for me, I appreciate it. So
absolutely.
Out of Pinky and the Brain, for anybody that's familiar with that, he's the brains. Like, what are you gonna do today? Same thing we do every day. Try to take over the world. That's it.
Right. That's it. Oh gosh.
So, Alice, for those who do want to contact or learn more about Lassie, where is it that they can find you, and how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, so we are at Lassie. And it's LAASIE.ai. So the play on that is loyalty as a service, right? So Lassie, also like the dog for us older folks, always always loyal.
What's that? Tommy fell down the well? No, sorry.
So Lassie.ai is our website. And if you want to reach us, you can find us at hello@lassie.ai.
Outstanding. Mr. Ed, it's been rare that I've get the chance to ask you this, but where, if they want to find out more about Flip.to and the amazing St. Onge?
So they can go to Flip.to, and you can find me on social media, Edward St. Onge. Every now and then I do surface to post things. And Loren, if people want to find enough episodes to binge watch for 3 straight weeks,
No. It's up to 2 months now. We have 2 months of persistent 24/7. We're being used in military strategies. I don't know, to get people to tell them information. It's torture, I guess. But we have the Hospitality Channel.tv, which is on the site. But you can watch us on TV on your own TV channel at Hospitality Channel, Roku, Apple, Google, Amazon. They're all there, and Twitch. We're actually, strangely enough, we're gonna actually have a show about Twitch. Twitch is crazy. Twitch is an amazing platform for anyway, that's another story, another time. Alice, thank you again for your time. Sincerely, Ed, always thank you for your time. And for everyone that got to participate with us here, thank you so much. And everybody on social media and everything else. And you can reach out to us for any questions or comments at Loren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I answer each and every email. We'll do a recap on my podcast here in a little bit of some of the show highlights as well. Thank you, gentlemen. Until next Friday, thank you all very, very much. We'll see everyone next week.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye, everyone.